You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
Hey, the gang's all here. Ba-bam. What's going on, peeps? What's going on, my peoples? It's Tuesday morning. It's the Chameleon Church Show. My name is Allan Aguirre, and it's Tuesday, February 11th. Man, lots happened in the last week. What's happened? A whole bunch of stuff. So my internet's working. So they fixed it after month one, but one of the ways they, quote, fixed it was they gave me a new modem router. And then they had like two or three trucks out here for a couple days because there was something literally wrong with like the main pipe, the main line. And they fixed that, but I still was broken. Well, then a month later, we had these people coming back. And they finally came back and they sent some new kid and he gave me a new modem router. I'm like, you don't even, why isn't it you? Why isn't it like the other guy that's been around? You don't even know the history of what's going on here. Anyway. And then it started working. So apparently the first router that they gave me, the new one, was clamped down to 2.4 or whatever. So it wasn't giving me my connection that I needed. So I was fixed, but they messed me up by giving me this router modem that was clamped down internally. It could have been adjusted, but why would I know to go in there? And he should have known. And so this new one they gave me wasn't clamped down, so everything's been working. So I've been working fine. So
the first guy was just his job. Wham bam, come in, do what he had to do. The other guy actually cared about what, I don't know, could be.
Yeah, or it was just pilot error.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm back up and running. I was getting a little frantic there. 2 months, man. That's a long time.
Yeah, well, you remember that when I first started with the Chameleon Show, I was having all kinds of connectivity issues, and I would end up calling Bell Canada, and their second tier technical support was all the way down in like Guatemala or Nicaragua or something like that. So I ended up having an opportunity to speak to the guy in Spanish and everything else. But again, it was when one guy finally came over, he looked at it and said, "Oh, this is an older model. It's probably faulty." And right. I'm like, you made me wait for like 2 months and all this aggravation for that.
Yeah. In Guatemala, I don't know. So I lived in Guatemala for a while. They would have brownouts. You'd lose your electricity. You'd lose your water. You'd lose your phone signal intermittently throughout
California too.
Oh, wow. No, not when I lived there.
They got that in California as well.
As of when?
It's happened a couple times now.
Huh. Oh. Yeah, but that was apparently on purpose.
Yes. Most of that stuff is.
Yeah, when I lived in California, we didn't have a problem with our electricity. When I lived in California, it was a whole different world. It was a whole new world. It wasn't like it is now. So what's going on? My mind's so full of stuff that's going on that I can't even. I did a new interview, I think. Did I do an interview before last week's show or after last week's show? Anyway, it's posted. I have a link to all my interview shows on YouTube. I'm not sure if I ever showed that with anybody. If you go to the Chameleon Church website, chameleonchurch.com, and then hit resources, social media, there's a link there to a link to all the interviews I've done on YouTube for the last couple of years. Well, not all of them, but the vast majority of them, including the Rude Awakening episodes, all 8 of them. Yeah. New book. Well, I'm going to get to that in a little bit. I've got a whole bunch of links to share with everybody because a whole bunch of stuff is going on for you guys to get involved with. Other than that, I'm really, man. So one of my plans this year in promote, like marketing to promote the new book, I'm actually thinking about. I'm planning on doing some road trips, getting in my vehicle and doing some 2 or 3 week a month road trips all over the country. Speaking, home churches, Bible studies, college groups, youth groups, conferences, whatever. And so I'm kind of getting a little excited about. I mean, I have absolutely no desire to be away from the family that much, the wife or the grandkids at all. But I'm thinking this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm kind of getting excited at the thought of hitting the road, maybe taking my dog, and the idea, is 2 or 3 towns a week, 2 days a town, and 2 or 3 weeks. There'll be some deadheading, obviously, to get to regions and back. So I'm looking at doing that. I'm kind of getting a little excited about that. So if you're out there and you'd like for me to come, if you want to, I'm thinking maybe find like someone to sponsor me in each state. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I have a centralized location in Ohio, let's say, then I can spoke out 2, 3, 4, 5 hours to different cities in that 2 or 3 week time. So finding like a state sponsor where I can have a centralized place, what I'm saying? Kind of like a base camp, centralized base camp to spoke out of, cover more territory instead of just like wandering around, little ideas like that. And so if you definitely, I'm going to be posting some links here in a bit. Reach out. Let me know if you're interested in, and how you'd be interested in supporting those type of efforts. Would like to come to your town. Would like to come to your home church, to your Bible study, to your youth group, Sunday morning church. Doesn't matter. Let's make it happen. Let's do it. How's it sound? What is that? How's that sound in the comments? How's that sound like to you guys? What do you guys think about about that?
I like it.
Well, if you're in the area and would like to come by, we'd love to have you come by, but I'm not going to pay for you. So
I never said anything about money, did I?
Well, sponsor. They're the little different. I'll sponsor. You can stay in my tiny house.
I explained what the sponsorship meant.
Oh,
being
you
able
did?
to stay somewhere central, staying one place, so I can spoke out and reach out.
Oh, as long as it doesn't cost me anything, you're welcome to come and stay.
Doing this show costs me.
It does?
Sleep.
So anyway, that went well.
We'll get your booking agent going, and away we go.
I am the booking agent. I'm the manager, booking agent, PR. I'm you name it. I'm
President, chief bottle washer.
Full Monty.
Yes.
What's Monty got to do with it?
So that went well. Absolutely no response from the comment thread, and Mark's basically saying, "Hell, not if I can stay off my lawn."
No, you can park next to the tiny house, get out and go in the tiny house. So.
Yeah, I'm rushing to get your address.
Hey, I offered you a free place to stay. What do you need?
I'd offer you a place to stay, but I don't have one. So
maybe you should be on the road. Maybe you should be road tripping it.
I should. I'm thinking about it.
So February 11th. All right. So it's Tuesday. What else? Man, I had a whole list of things to talk about. I thought. Apparently I don't. I do. I am going to share some stuff later in a little bit. Some links, because we started a Patreon. We did all this stuff in the last week. Just trying to get this book done. Trying to get this stuff done.
So how's Patreon working out for you?
I just launched it, and I'm good. I haven't really done a big full blown promotional for it, but yeah, we got some people on board.
Okay, cool. We've considered doing it. I just haven't taken the time to do it.
It's relatively easy, painless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know who Paul Neeson is?
Do I know who is?
Paul Neeson.
No.
Okay, never mind.
Should I?
Yeah, he's pretty big name out there in the Messianic lifestyle, but he's been around forever. He's kind of like a health watchman type guy. He teaches a lot about staying healthy and teaches the Torah and all those kind of things. And the man knows how to market his broadcasts and his product and everything. And I spend time with him every once in a while. He and I have known each other for a long time. I used to produce his show, and the man knows his stuff. He used to do a live call-in show on Lamb Radio. He would get calls in before his intro was done. So the man knows how to market his show and get it out there. And he tapped us out every time he was on the show. So I was saying he turned me on Patreon and several other things that I'm trying to work on anyway.
Paul Neeson?
Paul Neeson, Nison. The Health Watchman. He's known by the Health Watchman. He's got several different websites, but he was diagnosed real young with Crohn's, and it solved that issue by the food he ate. And so he became a spokesman for eating raw and, solving health problems by eating the right stuff. And so he's real well known. He's got a huge following in the Messianic lifestyle, and teaches Torah.
Yeah, cool. I avoided the whole Messianic or Hebrew, whatever you want to call it. I avoided that whole scene for so long. I only got involved because of the Facebook. So I've only been involved with these, with y'all, with all y'all, for almost 2 years. It's been less than just under 2 years. Yeah, next month it'll be 2 years since that book came out.
So you only got involved in the movement when we started the show, basically.
Who? You?
You.
Yeah, because I released the book. I didn't even worry about any of that until the book was done. Got involved with that Now You See TV circus. Yeah, I called it that because it is. I mean, I sold a lot of books, but it just, yeah, so.
The things you got to put up with in order to make it a bucka.
It's just crazy. And there's, if it's like, for example, I mean, granted, Messianic Lab Network, and I only know it because I'm reading it right now behind Mark's skull. It's a lot smaller. It's only like 600 plus or whatever on the network. The other one, had a couple, 200,000 or 300,000. They've lost a lot of people in the last year. So I mean, yeah, I understand how it's harder to manage that amount of people. But
ours is 600 and some actual subscribers.
Sure.
We don't go out there and get faux subscribers,
right?
Like your hundreds of thousands of subscribers.
Right, but not just that. If there's an issue, if people from this network started coming at us, or whatever, Mark would, he would intervene or say something. These guys, man, they didn't even try.
Yeah.
To manage it. And it's like, wait, you guys actually call yourself like an online church. I mean, they literally did. They've backpedaled. They don't say that now, but I'm like, why aren't you taking care of this stuff? I mean, you can't say that you're a church. Anyway, it was just really nasty over there. It was a nasty bunch. So anyway, I'm not here to talk smack about another network or whatever. I'm just saying. So I got involved. Yeah, it's been only 2 years, and yeah.
Well, I mean, what it all comes down to, and no matter what gifting you have, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, if you don't have love, then it's useless. He says you could even literally burn your body. You could sacrifice your body for the cause. But if it's not done with love, and what I find is it's endemic within society, of course, but it's also especially pernicious within the Messianic movement, is that there's this spirit of judgmentalness that people have. And it's this desire to tear down, is this desire to, we want to condemn that instead of building up. And Yeshua said that I didn't come to judge the world, I came to save it. The world's already been judged.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the insanity with the coronavirus, there's a major call going on in China right now. And it's going to be spread to other parts of the world. You've got this huge locust swarm over in Africa that's literally eating everything in its path. Judgment's already come to the world. Yeah. And if we're not going to exhibit love, listen, we got to correct one another. We have to sharpen one another as iron sharpens iron. But it's always got to be in the spirit of love.
Right. I mean, I knew it was bad. I just didn't know it was that bad. I mean, I was a little surprised. I remember the first interview I did was on that network, and people were freaking out about my earrings. I'm like, oh my God, it's 2018. How could you possibly be freaking out about my earrings? It's like I thought it was like 1988 again. And I was just like, what the hell? How can you possibly be focusing on that? How can a Torah believing man wear earrings? I'm like,
I know.
How can you be so stupid to ask that question? It was just mind blowing. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, really? We've literally have not progressed in 30 years in any way, shape, or form. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. I wore a black shirt on an interview once, and they're like, see, he's part of a cult. He's wearing black. I'm like, what year is it? And it was, I mean, it didn't take me that long, but I finally realized what was going on. Oh, you were a nominal Christian to begin with. You were that guy in Christianity who was, the drum beat. It's from Africa, or, all that nonsense, all that crazy Christian crap from the 80s, the drum beats from Africa, you can't wear black, you got an earring on. I mean, all that crazy stuff. Oh, it doesn't matter if it's 2018 or not. It doesn't matter if it's 35 years past, the age of enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. You were a nominal Christian at best. And now you're a nominal Christian that observes Torah. So all you've done is bring all that nonsense, all that religious baggage to this platform. And that's why you're freaking out on the fact that I have earrings, or that,
some people don't consider earrings enlightenment. I mean, it's you just got to roll with it.
This is bizarre, man. It's bizarre.
Yeah, Allan, you got to learn to conform, see?
Oh, heck, look at that. You did cut all your wig off.
You got to learn to conform, dude.
Hey, dude, look at that. I had my hair cut before you. I cut dreads that were down in my ass. So whatever. You know what? No. You know what? I'm going on 56. I'll be 56 in a couple weeks. I'm a 56-year-old grandfather. I didn't play the game back then. I'm not going to play it now. There's no way. Well,
I feel so bad about cutting my ponytail off now.
Well,
now that you said that, man, I feel really bad about conforming.
Dude, ponytails went out like in the 70s, bro.
Yeah.
just to let you know. Just to let you know.
So did earrings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about whether I wear, the stuff these people are making an issue out of. I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about, am I walking straight? Do I have a good attitude? Am I treating my wife with respect?
Well, and like I said, when we came down here, there was a couple that was all excited about us coming down. They had 6 children. They had recently discovered, Torah, and wife posted something on one of these Facebook groups, got eviscerated, and both of them have left now. And I'm not even sure if they're walking with the Lord, much less the Messianic movement. I mean, it's like, so what exactly did we accomplish with that? I mean, if we're going to sit there and we're going to point fingers, and listen, I get all kinds of things that people can point fingers at me with.
Yeah. You know what?
My laundry list of inadequacies and things that I still need to work on. We could talk for an hour and just get started. So how is that building community? How is that edifying the body? How is that bringing glory to Messiah? I mean, his whole exhortation in John 17 was that we may be one, so that the world may know that the Lord sent him.
You know, I think sometimes some of us are just there to do that to people. You know, I mean, some of the Old Testament prophets, all they did was walk around and trigger people. That was their job.
Well, you know, there are a lot of people out there, and I'm sure we've all come across them, that feel that it is their calling and their anointing to go correct the church.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
those are my favorite people, because that's just so weird.
Well, but if you look at the prophets, as we were talking about, there were times where they did have to confront leadership. You look at Elijah. Elijah was specifically called to confront Ahab a couple of times.
But that was their job.
But it was only one-off. Like, that wasn't Elijah's entire life.
Right.
God said, you need to go confront Ahab now. But the rest of his life, he would just live it out, and he would do his thing, and he would teach, or whatever it was, or he would school the prophets. So even the ones that got the calling that Scripture records, it was Nathan didn't spend his entire time yelling at King David. It was a one-off.
Yeah.
So for those who feel that they have this calling and anointing, where does that come from?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you remember, I had that woman, she physically came to our Shabbat group for like maybe 6 weeks and decided, I was this horrible person, devil, false teacher, whatever, and made it
your horns are on your ears.
Yeah. She made it her ministry to go out there online and defame me in every possible way, in every possible group, in every possible thread and chat room. And it was nuts. It's like, wow. And her whole thing is, I know him. I used to go to his. You don't know me. You were around for 6 weeks, and you showed up for 3 or 4 meetings. It's like, that's besides the point. You can't sustain or back up anything that you're saying. It's just bizarre. There are literally people out there. Okay, well, there's, everyone knows the term troll nowadays, internet trolls. Yeah. I don't understand what it is that would cause somebody to be a troll. I mean, why would you want to be that person? What is so wrong with your life that's what you do?
It's the troll, whole idea.
Comment threads, troll, it's so bizarre.
It makes people feel good to tear others down because they lack confidence themselves, or they have unhealed areas in their life. Listen, hurting people hurt people. We understand.
Yeah, but I don't understand it. I mean, I don't know you. I don't physically know you. I'll never meet you. I saw you I saw you like this on the internet, and I'm gonna tear into you.
Because, well, what does Paul say? Love waxes cold. In the latter days, love will grow cold, and men will become lovers of selves. We're in those end times.
How does what we're talking about tie in with this week's Torah portion?
Well, Moses takes the children of Israel out. They spend a couple of sessions complaining and whining, and then Jethro comes.
So my new book that I'm working on, the book that I'm writing, it's called The Amazing. I might as well do it right now. It's called The Amazing Journey from Exodus to Ingathering, and the premise is 1 Corinthians 10. Paul talks about how don't be ignorant. What Israel experienced in the desert was written down as a warning to you, New Testament Gentile church, how not to be. And so I'm using that as the premise. And so the idea is I'm taking you from Egypt to the Promised Land, to the ingathering in the Promised Land, and there's this whole time frame in the wilderness campaign that God is trying to do something with Israel. God's trying to teach them something. Israel's not receptive, and every time they turn around, they're blowing it and all that. And it's so I've been drowning in that narrative for a couple months now. For a couple thousand man hours just looking at this narrative, besides the time I spent to write the feast book. And it's absolutely amazing because you're absolutely correct. Almost the entire Moses wilderness campaign coincides with what we're talking about. It's terrifying. But here's the scary part about it. Here's the scary part, and it's hard to write about this in any of my books because it sounds like anti-Semitism. It sounds like I'm picking on them, and it's almost like culturally slander, like I'm slandering them culturally, but I'm not. I'm just talking about the biblical narrative. But it's like, not only are they defiant and ignorantly defiant in their rebellion, but they're arrogant about it. Which is what makes it, which is why God wants to wipe them out and like total genocide, disinherit them, all these horrible things God says, because it's like, not only did you do wrong, not only are you disobedient, not only are you that ignorantly stupid to disobey after I clearly made the instruction what to do, but you bitch and complain. Can you say that? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay. But you complain about it afterward, like I did something wrong when you're the one that did something wrong, and then you become very arrogant about it. And it's that wickedness in your heart to be arrogantly, what's the word?
It's defiant.
Defiant. They're arrogantly defiant in their disobedience. That's why God's like, they're on his last nerve. I'm going to wipe you out. I'm going to start killing you, knocking your, because you won't repent. And because you're so defiant, arrogant in your defiance, you are not going to repent. You're not going to actually stop doing these wrong things. You're going to continue to do them. And this is going to compound upon itself and magnify.
On Shabbat, when I did the Torah portion, because I'm going through the entire Torah over this next year, and I talked about that God hardened Pharaoh's heart because Pharaoh had hardened his own heart. He had said already, I'm not going to listen to God. And so God says, okay, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to increase it. So I'm going to make you not only stubborn and defiant, I'm going to make you stupid on top of it.
Yeah.
Because if you think that you can fight against God, then you're stupid. And I think the stupidest creature in all of history has got to be Lucifer. He still thinks he can beat God. I mean, that to me but God has given him over. God has blinded him to his rightful position that you're a creature, I'm the creator. This isn't going to work out well for you. But I'll let this play out for about 6,000 years, or however long it's been.
I think he's so full of hatred and bitterness. He knows he's going to lose, so he's trying to take as many of us with him as he can.
And there's that too. But he's still trying to create this army, this Nephilim army, this transhuman army, this AI army. Like, it's going to be everything. The Battle of Armageddon, I don't think people really understand how wild Star Trek, how
multi-dimensional it's going to be.
It's going to be a trip that Hollywood couldn't even begin to get their heads around, and it's all going to be over like that.
You know what? The closest they can get to it is the end game, the last battle at the Avengers end game. Right. Portals are opening up, and
So I mean, this thing is going to go down, and so God said,
"What if that's a prophetic look at that?"
Well, I think it's predictive programming. I think they're telling us what they're trying to do anyway, and it seems quite apparent that God's going to allow it to happen, and then He's going to step out of heaven in Revelation 19, and it's going to be over, and everybody's going to be going, "What happened?" It's like getting in the ring with Mike Tyson in his prime. It's just like boom, 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 and down you go.
And that's the interesting thing that people don't that the Romanized Western Church hasn't really been taught, or they don't focus on, and that's the second coming of Jesus. Is Jesus coming down to liberate and defend and protect Israel from her enemies?
Yeah.
You know, that nation state you guys are all up in arms about. That's what's interesting. So here I'm gonna do a little bit of quick little business here, since we're in a little lull and we're kind of talking about this. So the new book, The Amazing Journey from Exodus to Ingathering, it's a 52-week devotional journal calendar. And then at the same time, we've got what's called the Field Manual, which is going to be all 52 devotionals, but they're unabridged. They're not edited down. So here's some links where you can start getting involved. This is the Facebook page for the group for this book. There's the Facebook page link, and then here's the Instagram for this series, and we're going to be doing the idea is to do this every year, once a year, and it'll be different devotionals, because there's also a calendar, and there's journaling, and there's prayer modules, and so there's the link to the Facebook page and the Instagram. So we've started a Patreon, and there are 3, right? I mean, you can put in your own amount, but we've got like a basic entry level. Then do you remember me talking about doing a monthly group called the Exodus Expedition, where it's going to be a private Facebook group where we're going to be able to do this? It's going to be exclusive content that you're not going to see on here. You're not going to see on Facebook. You're not going to see anywhere else. Okay, well, that's how you can pay for that. You can do monthly reoccurring as well as just general support. There's 3 tiers. One of the tiers is to help with the overland excursion. I know there's some people out there that do like $50, $100, $200, $500 a month, to help with gas and all that. I'm not doing that. I'm keeping it down to like 25, and we'll see. I mean, if it grows, it grows. But so there's that. There's the Patreon. Now, if you want to pre-order, so we're offering pre-orders right now, and we're limiting the pre-orders to those that are actually on Patreon already and a part of the Exodus Expedition private group. So those people they're going to have the opportunity to pre-order these 2 books before I open it up to the public. So I thought, since we're hanging out every week, I'm going to offer the pre-ordering to you guys as well before the general public. So there's the link. There's the link to pre-order the devotional journal calendar, The Amazing Journey from Exodus to Ingathering. And then here's the link to order the Field Manual. The Field Manual is about, 5 or 6 pages per devotional times 52. So it's like 350 plus. It's actually, I think, thicker than the, whatchamacallit? What's the name of that? The Feast Unlocked. So here's the link to pre-order the Field Manual right here. You're welcome. Absolutely my pleasure. So there's the link for the Field Manual. Now, if you want to get both, so here's the way this is designed. This is designed to work together. The Field Manual and the whatchamacallit? I just kind of messed this up. The Field Manual and the devotional, those 2 books are meant to be they're meant to work together. The reason why they're not in one book is it's too big. It would be too big, and it wouldn't work that way. So that's why we have 2 books. We don't have 2 books to gouge you. That's just the better way to do it. So they're designed to work together. So there's the link. We're calling it the Excursion Pack, where you can buy both the devotional journal calendar and the Field Manual, and we're combining and we're making like a pack where you can buy both of them for I think $5 less or something. So it's called the Excursion Pack. There's the link to that. And then, as you heard me talk about earlier, we're talking about going out on the road and doing road trips. And so I was asked. So I was asked a couple times from other people on other Facebook and stuff. What kind of things are you in need of? And so we have an Amazon wish list. These are the type of items that we're trying to get, some of the things that we need. So anyway, we've made the wish list live or public so that you can go there, and if you'd like, you can purchase these items and for us. So we have the Patreon. That's one way for you to get involved. You can buy the books, the new books. Those are the links to the new books. You can pre-order the new book. Then there's a link to the excursion pack, which are both books like in a package. And then we have a new YouTube channel that we're launching. And anyway, I'm pretty excited about all of this stuff, and we're working hard on it. And there's all the links. Knock yourselves out. We appreciate your support again, always. And thank you very much. All right, guys, come on back. Let's talk about something. We'll be doing commercials soon. We'll just hit the video.
Well,
we can all sit back and watch, get more coffee or whatever.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we launched our men's discipleship on Sunday night.
Oh, tell me, how did that go?
I think it went well. Obviously doing kind of a live and online broadcast thing, it's going to take some coordinating to get the comfort level, but it seemed to go well. There was this one guy who there was comment after comment after comment on the screen. Oh my goodness, like he didn't stop.
Were they like good comments, relevant comments, or were they just harassing?
Some troll.
I mean, didn't he have anything better to do?
Probably an invited troll.
No, it was good. I mean, I think there were a couple of guys who were here who wouldn't normally, like, there's a lot of really phlegmatic guys in the area here, and sometimes you got to go check for a pulse, and yet even one or two of them were pretty animated. So I think the idea that the guys are going to get together and really discuss some hardcore issues, but also a lot of what I find passes for men's discipleship within Christianity today is you get together for breakfast once a month and you have bacon or pork sausages, and off you go. To have that, true intimate fellowship where you really get to know someone, I think it's more unusual than not. And I think that's what's causing a lot of the problem, is that men don't really feel that there's a good outlet. Going into the Torah portion this week, we have a Jethro, and when he shows up on the scene, Moses is 80 years old, and yet here Jethro comes, and he was trained in Egypt to be a leader for 40 years. He's a general. He was a shepherd for 40 years. Jethro shows up, and he's
trained in Egypt for 40 years. You said 40, yeah.
40 years. So he went to the University of Cairo for 40 years and was trained in management and business and stuff like. I mean, he was trained on how to lead.
He was being groomed to be Pharaoh.
What was that?
He was being groomed to be Pharaoh.
Well, I don't know if he was. That's never really clear, because if you look at,
he would have been co-Pharaoh with his mother, Pharaoh's sister, and he was probably known as Senhut, which defines that. Yeah.
So anyway, but whether he would have been second in command or whatever the case may be, he was still at least going to lead the armies.
Yeah.
So he's got all this training and everything else, and he's 80 years old. He leads them out. He's he knows God and everything else, and yet when you get to how he's kind of conducting things, Jethro shows up and he says, "What you're doing is going to wear you out. You need to do this." And it's a slight shift. If you read Exodus 18, you'll see how it's not really a huge difference between what Moses is doing and what Jethro advises him to do. It's more of a tweak. But that tweak made all the difference in the world, because he says, you're gonna burn yourself out doing this. You can't handle what you're doing. It's unsustainable. And so here is this guy who, and he lived with him for 40 years. So they've got this intimacy together and that trust factor. And I love how Jethro just walks in and says, listen, I'm going to give you advice, and it's up to you. You take it to God and you do what you want with it. There's no, you need to do this, which goes on a lot. It's that trust factor. And I think what the men really need today is to develop that trust factor with one another, and have the older brothers, the more mature brothers, to be able to sow into the younger ones. This whole idea of mentorship, I think, is really lost in society nowadays, which is why we've got a whole generation of snowflakes and people who are incapable of making basic decisions. I was just talking with a guy yesterday. My aunt passed away a couple of months ago, and my cousins, who are both around 40, one's a little older, one's a little younger, boy and a girl, and they're both, they don't know what to do. They're incapable of now functioning now that my aunt is gone. And that's because they were emotionally crippled all their years. She helicoptered them. She made them so dependent upon her emotionally that now that she's gone, and there was no time to prepare for her death or anything like that. Like she went like that. And now I was just talking to a friend of hers who had spent some time with them, that they're still in crisis mode a couple of months later because they have no skills. And I said, the job of a parent is to prepare their children to be able to live independently of them outside of the house. And we're not doing that now. We've got a whole society, and it comes from top down. It's the whole crippling thing of emotionalism, that we have a whole generation of kids now who don't even know what it's like to deal with rejection, much less conflict and crisis in their lives.
Yeah.
So I love how Jethro comes and says, Moses, I'm going to give you some advice. Take it from an old man here. And we don't know how old Jethro was, but they might have been the same age. We don't know. But the fact that, he comes and he sows into him and everything else, I think is really the model by which we ought to be looking at ourselves for, and how to build community. That the older brothers need to mentor the younger brothers. The older women need to mentor the younger women.
Right. And that's essentially, literally, what it is that I'm working on in these new books. I mean, the Feast book is all about teaching and helping, and people navigate that stuff. And this is the same thing. There's mentoring involved. There's Bible study. There's teaching. There's, you need to make it to your prophetic inheritance.
Mm.
And there's all these obstacles to keep you from entering into your promised land. And we need to avoid, just like Paul warns us in 1 Corinthians 10, we need to avoid the pitfalls that Israel consciously, with their eyes wide open, walked into. We need to avoid those. We need to, what are the mistakes? What happened to Israel? What did they do? What did they not do? We need to avoid the same mistakes. Well, a lot of us aren't going to be able to avoid those mistakes because we're not being, we haven't been discipled. We don't have mentors, those type of things. That's why, like, the Messianic Lamb Network is such I think it's a vital tool for these things, because we have a platform and an outlet to do just that. And that's what we're doing. I mean, and we've talked about that. We're here doing this to help you, to help others walk this stuff out. And so this new book, these two new books, these resources, we call it the E2I series, the Exodus to Ingathering series. This series that I'm working on is broken down to weekly devotionals, Bible studies, the Torah portions, journaling, prayer modules, all that stuff, to assist you in going forward. You have to make it to your prophetic inheritance without getting taken out in the desert. And then either by being taken out by the enemy, or you taking yourself out. How many times in the New Testament does talk about us making sure that our position is secure, that our salvation is secure, that, after doing everything that we can, stand. And, it's the New Testament constantly is telling us through like Paul's letters and the epistles, it's our responsibility to make sure we're still in the race, that we're running as to win and not fighting and beating the air, because there's so many obstacles, there's so many variables that can keep us from making it to the end. You just die on the branch. You can't die on the branch either. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. Christendom, Romanized Western Christianity has just conveniently thrown out a massive blanket of, oh, don't worry about it. You're saved. You're good to go. You don't have to literally do anything to keep that salvation, which is contrary to all New Testament teaching.
For sure.
No, you've got to continue to fan that flame. No, you have to bear fruit, because if we find out that your branch isn't bearing fruit, you're cut off and thrown in the fire. You've got to do everything you can and everything that you're supposed to do to keep that flame alive and to bear godly fruit. And you're not going to do that if you're stagnant and dying on the branch, which means you have to be trained and raised up. And, Israel left Egypt dressed for battle, but God avoided a battle by going the long way because he knew they wouldn't be able to handle it. Israel has no idea that what God is about to do to them is to prepare them to become a warring people.
And that's why the whole theme of our men's group is Psalm 144, verse 1. Yeah. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle.
Exactly. We do not know. We do not understand.
In the Song of Moses in Exodus 15, it says God is a warrior.
I know. So I was just thinking about this. So 10 years ago, I put out an album called 1518, Exodus 1518. That's the name of the album. And I'm surprised that here I am 10 years later and I'm doing this whole Exodus thing, Exodus exploration, Exodus to ingathering, Exodus excursion, Exodus. But this is what it is. We, as believers, we don't understand that. We don't understand that God is the whole purpose of Christendom is to make us like Jesus. And the process of being transformed into the likeness of his son is to make us into a warring battle people. Why? Because there's a spiritual warfare that's been coming at you since before you even got saved. And you need to learn how to fight that battle, that spiritual war. And we're all passive aggressive, and we've all have been convinced that we're not supposed to be aggressive, that we don't have to do any of that. Christianity is basically a religion of lumps that's sitting around a men's group eating breakfast with no God ever showing up, and without any encounter, and without any transformation mountain experience. You know what I'm saying? It's not about that. It's never been about that. He has to make us a warring people, or we'll lose the spiritual warfare.
Well, we're in a war, whether we want to admit it or not.
Exactly. And so Israel, he knows Israel will not fight if the Philistines pick a fight. So to avoid that, he goes the long way, but he has them dressed for battle. Why? He begins the identity transformation process from the very beginning. And then all throughout the 40 years, he's picking fights with different people. He's trying to avoid them too. He's training them. And it even says in Judges 2, I'm training you to be a warring people. That's what I did in the desert, was to train you to be a warring people, because if I didn't, you would have died a long time ago. You have to learn how to defend yourself and to protect yourself.
As they're leaving Egypt, it says in Exodus 13:8, he says, hence God led the people around by the way of the wilderness, the Red Sea, and the sons of Israel went out up in martial array.
Yes.
From the land of it. So they left Egypt.
Dressed for battle.
In martial array.
Yeah. So that's part of the identity process. See, even though I know you're not going to fight and you're going to hightail and cowardly run back to Egypt, so I'm going to take you the long way around to avoid a potential fight if the Philistines choose to pick one. So he deliberately keeps them from getting into a fight, but he deliberately has them dressed to fight because he has to start the identity process somewhere.
Build it in the psyche.
Right. And that's how that's how it works. So dress for battle, but we're going to avoid battle because see, they don't know his long game is to create a warring people out of them. They don't know this. And so when they get to the 12 spies, that's why they freak out. Well, what are you talking about? We have to go down there and beat up the giants. We can't take on the Nephilim. Well, you're going to have to because they're in possession of the land. You have to dispossess them.
And grow our own food. And I like the welfare system.
Right. So we've never been taught that God's desire is for us to be a warring people so that we can fight a spiritual war and win, and to possess a land that's going to require our dispossessing of demonic strongholds. We've never been taught that.
Well, I think one of the problems is that when a lot of pastors teach about the land of Canaan, they say that Canaan is a picture of heaven. And although there may be some reference, some sort of symbolism about that, that's not the reality, because in heaven, there's no giants to fight. In heaven, there's no battle. You don't have to go and conquer heaven. That's the end promise. Canaan is more of a picture of God's promises to us, that he's never going to leave us nor forsake us. And that's what I spoke about in this past Torah portion. That, pillar of cloud by day, fire by night, he was always there with them.
Yes.
He parts the Red Sea, all of this stuff. But we still have to fight. And
we
I don't
still
know
have to make it to Canaan.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the fight is increasing. We've got an increase in spiritual activity out there over the past few years, and it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah. Which is why I think this is an important resource, because there's battle tactics. There's all these things in this devotional journal calendar and field manual. It's, and it's wax on, wax off. You think I'm teaching you how to wax my car or paint my fence, but I'm actually teaching you how to fight, whether you know it or not. And that's always been my method. And, and we're doing that, I'm having to repeat these themes and these because that's just the formula. God's constantly repeating. The New Testament's constantly repeating. Right. Jesus is constantly repeating because he knows we're dull-minded, and it has to become right muscle memory.
Okay. What I find is different people have different value systems. And it's not that a lot of people don't want to learn to fight or don't realize that they're in a battle or not in a battle. It's more of, where do I place my value? Is this my value? Because this basically is the generations coming up. And a lot of our generation find this to be their value, and it's a distraction. Whereas with the Lord, we don't find that value system of what he finds of value. Then our value system is all whacked out. And so anyway, he's gone. So. I guess he thought of what I was saying was of a lot of value. So anyway,
I think he just needed more coffee.
No, I understand.
But no, there's a lot of men who don't understand that this is a fight, and that their first instinct, and a lot of it has to do with temperament, a lot of it has to do with upbringing, that the first instinct is to turtle, to duck and run. I had one guy say to me that for the first 8 years of his marriage, he and his wife never got into a fight, because anytime she said something, he said, "Yes, dear." And all of a sudden one day he was like, "All right, that's enough." And it was on. So, if men haven't been trained, and, some personalities are more geared toward conflict. They're not as uncomfortable with it. I always tell people, I said, I don't like conflict. It's not that it gives me pleasure or anything like that, but I understand how to do it, and I'm not afraid to engage in it. I mean, if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. But there are some personalities where conflict avoidance is the number one objective in life, and so they become people pleasers. They allow themselves. I mean, I heard a story yesterday from one guy who ended up getting into a whole mess of a situation because his wife decided she was going to do something without any knowledge, made a phone call, handed him the phone and said, "We're going to do this." And it ended up driving them into bankruptcy because of a whole series of events.
But
and
that person has trained themselves to be that way. You know, it's not. I don't think it's across the board that men just haven't been trained. I think you can be trained. A lot of men can be trained, and then a lot of men can recognize these different things that you guys are talking about, but they choose not to have conflict with their wives. They choose not to have conflict with the world. I mean, I don't think anybody but trolls, and trolls are bullies, and bullies are ones that love conflict because it puts, like you said earlier, puts them on top. But it's not necessarily, you can train a bully all you want to, but in their thought process, in what they choose, that's what they find of value because it suits them. And when you're walking with the Lord, what's of value is to, yes, love your neighbor as you love yourself, which is to me a great verse because it incorporates both. If Yeshua had just said, you know, the main thing is to love your neighbor, you know, then that means I am nobody and my value is only other people. Well, that's not true. The value has to be of, I have to know and choose to value myself and know who I am before I can love my neighbor. So I have to love my neighbor as myself, but we have to choose that. And you can train all you want to, but if a person still is just going to choose to go this direction, so we have to have that in us. It has to be in our soul to want to value those things that the Lord values. And the training to me is, first of all, find that of value and train them to accept that, to be that way. You can train all day long, but you know, it's got to do with each individual person.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me I'm wrong. Okay.
So I think it's helping people understand their identity in Messiah, and that if you are called to this, there is a war on, and that whether we like it or not, we're in this war. So you're either going to accept it and prepare for it and allow God to do the training, because I mean, if we're being conformed to his image, then the first time he came was as the Lamb who took away the sin of the world. The second time he's coming back is as a conquering king. And when I do a Passover Seder, I always, you know, when we go to the third cup, the fourth cup, the cup of praise, the cup of Elijah, I always read that passage where it says that, you know, he will restore the hearts of the fathers and the hearts of the sons. But it's all about that he's going to come and announce the return of the Lord. But when he comes back, it is the great and fearful day of the Lord. I said, well, we know that passage hasn't occurred yet, because when Yeshua came the first time, it wasn't as a conquering king. It was as a sacrificial lamb. And he laid down his life and he turned the other cheek and all these other things. And it was passive disobedience. And when he comes back, you do not want to be on the wrong side of that. Because if we look at the picture that Daniel has, if we look at the picture of John, and John in Revelation gets the same picture of Yeshua that Daniel did, where you've got this flames of fire coming out of his eye. I mean, that's a terrifying. Here's John, the apostle of love, and he's on the Isle of Patmos, and he sees a picture of not only the resurrected Messiah, whom he saw. I mean, Yeshua resurrected, and he's still. But when he sees the picture of when he is returning as the full glory of God, here's a guy who walked with him all those years, and he falls down as of a dead man. Like, he's terrified of this picture. That is what's going to be the result or the destiny of the enemies of God. They shake their fists at him and they curse him, but they say, "Who will deliver us from the Lamb?" They know who it is, and they still won't repent. You do not want to be on the wrong side of that battle when it comes, and it's getting a lot closer. And there's a lot of people in the prophetic movement who have been essentially saying that God is rolling up his sleeves right now. And he is about to launch into the enemies of God. I mean, if you look at this whole impeachment circus that went on, and it's like, don't you people understand that Trump was my man? That I'm the one who set him up? And no matter how many times you come at him, it's not going to work.
It's funny you should bring that up. I posted this yesterday or last night. Let me just read it, because it's literally what you just said. I love it. I love it how God does that with us, between us. So last night, what time was it at? And I'll even tell you that. Okay, so yesterday at 12 noon, so around noon yesterday, I posted this. When the spies were sent into the promised land to scout out the land, only 2 of the 12 spies came back in agreement with God's prophetic spirit. The other 10 spies, the 80%, had a difficult time resolving in their minds that God would bring them out into the desert from a life of slavery they kept saying was better in Egypt, to do unwinnable battle with giants. This inability to reconcile in their minds God's prophetic spirit with their perceived reality brought fear, doubt, and unbelief into the hearts and minds of the people, which resulted in their deaths and non-inheritance of their prophetic destiny. This is what a massively large Christian demographic is doing right now, today, in regards to a Trump presidency and God's prophetic spirit. Are you going to go with the 80% or the 2 guys that survived what was coming?
Yeah.
And that's my question. My question isn't whether you like Trump or not. My question to the amount of Christians in my life that are anti-Trump, I understand that you don't like the guy. I understand that you're having a hard, and not only do they not like the guy, they're absolutely, we're at the divide between us and them, because they're thinking, what is wrong with you people that are calling yourselves Christians that are blindly in support of this man and his administration? So a Trump presidency is actually dividing the church.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen it.
Which it's designed to do.
Right. So my question is, I'm not asking you to like the guy. I'm not saying for you to even jump on board. My main question is this: if the Spirit of God prophesied a Trump presidency, and he didn't warn us against it, but he warned us for it as a stay of execution, your position of being so anti-Trump and anti-Trump presidency and anti-Christian that's in support of Trump is my concern, because you're on the wrong side of God's prophetic spirit. The prophetic spirit does 2 things. It warns you, and then you want to be on that warning, or it tells you what it's going to do so that you can align with it. This wasn't a warning prophecy about a Trump presidency. This is a good thing that I'm doing for you. So my question has been all along, if you're on the, if you're allowing yourself, you're aligning yourself on the wrong side of God's prophetic spirit. That's dangerous. I'm not saying you have to like the guy or agree with the guy or any of that. What I'm saying is you most definitely do have to align yourself with the prophetic spirit of God.
I mean, people are okay. So when you talk about the voice of the prophetic spirit, so we're talking about the Rhema essentially. But even if you and I, something that has really started to percolate in my spirit lately is that the Rhema can never violate the Logos. The spoken word can never violate the written word, because if you have a word from the Spirit that violates the Bible, it's not God's Spirit. It's not the voice of God that you're hearing. And I think there's a lot of people running around and say, God told me this, God told me that. And it's like, well, which God? Because it's not the God of creation. It's not the God of the Bible that's telling you that. But if we look at how people are responding to Donald Trump, and we get the fact that he may not be a terribly likable guy. I mean, the thing that he is most known for in the last 20, 25 years is you're fired. Okay. I mean, even Michael Lake is talking about the fact that he is a bull in a china shop. But that's exactly, if you look at who God raised up to take care of Jezebel, who was it? It was Jehu. Jehu wasn't exactly a man of gentle countenance, shall we say. He wasn't exactly a man of thoughtfulness and contemplation. He wasn't like Isaac, who went out into the field and, meditated on the Lord. He got stuff done. But up until now, nobody's been able to get anything done. And all of a sudden, God raises up this man. But what does the scripture say? What does the Logos say? The Logos says that we need to submit to our governing authorities, and the Logos says that we need to pray for our leaders. I despise everything that Justin Trudeau stands for. I think that he is an unbelievably evil man. I believe that everything he stands for is Antichrist. But he who God chose to lead this country for now. And even after all the opportunities the Canadians had with the blackface scandal, with the SNC-Lavalin scandal, with all of these scandals that have rocked his prime ministership, the Canadians still voted for him. And the reason is God said, he's my judgment on Canada. So what is my responsibility? Sit there and tear him down? No. Torah says that you do not speak ill of a leader. You do not condemn your leader. You need to pray for him. You may condemn his works.
Yeah.
But don't speak against him, because he is God's man for the time, and you do not go against who God raised up. God raises up, and look at what Nebuchadnezzar says.
Right.
He raises him up, he takes him down. It's according to his will, and we need to get in line with God's agenda. Right.
And so that's always been my main concern. I'm not trying to get you to like Trump. I'm just trying to get you to align yourself with God's prophetic spirit. But it's not going to happen. And here's why. Because here's the three main reasons Christians hate Trump and won't listen to what I'm talking about. One, God would never use a man like that. Two, I don't believe in the prophetic.
That's a big deal right there.
Yep.
That's a big deal.
Right. And three, oh, geez.
Sorry, I distracted you.
No, it's all right.
It's a sometimers moment.
Those are the three main things I've heard. Those three main, I can't remember the third one. Those are the three biggest things I've heard. One, God would never use a man like that. Two, I don't believe in the prophetic.
Yeah.
And I can't remember number three. But those are the three main things. And you know what? I can't help you with that. I can't help you when it comes to believing whether God would use an undesirable or not. Yeah. I mean, if you can't, and the third reason is the pray for your leaders. Those are kings and stuff, not voted in public servants.
Yeah.
So I've been, if I make stuff up,
yeah,
I can get away with whatever.
I can come up with 14 different reasons.
For your justification for being a Christian that hates Trump and talking smack about Christians that support Trump are based on God would never use him, a man like that. That's not my God. And if God does that, then I don't want any part of anything to do with that God. 2, I don't believe in the prophetic, and there's no prophets today. 3, that verse is talking about praying for kings, not public servants that have been voted in. So I can't work with any of those 3. There's nothing I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. So you're basically on your own, and this is what we're talking about. This is when the Bible starts talking about how you're under you're diluted, you're under a strong delusion. Your heart's hard. It's made of stone, not of flesh. You don't have ears to hear or eyes to see. When the Bible talks about all that, they're talking about these people in this, and for example, in this case scenario. Yeah. I'm not asking you to like the guy.
Yeah.
I don't care if you like the guy. You're making it an issue of whether to like the guy or not. I'm just trying to get you to align with God's prophetic spirit, because if you can't align yourself with God's prophetic spirit today, you won't align yourself with God's prophetic spirit when the false prophet and the Antichrist come.
Right.
Because many will fall away.
Because part of your agenda, anti-Trumper, is social justice and the Christian left. And the only player in the Bible that offers you global peace, global economic stability, and coexist, happy, warm feelings with all 3 religions is the Antichrist, not Jesus. Yeah. So everything you're looking for and everything you want, open borders, the immigrant, all those policies that the Christian left want, they're all anti-Trump. Jesus doesn't bring that.
Right. That's all tolerance.
The Antichrist brings that.
It's all everything.
Right. So let's connect the dots. You don't believe in any of this Bible stuff. You're not seeing any of this Bible stuff. You're in alignment with a government with stuff that you think is Jesus is all about social justice and Jesus. Jesus and Mary and Joseph were immigrants, and they were, what is that nonsense you hear? And they were exiled and they were brought, all that. No, they weren't actually. All that stuff, wrap that with the anti-Trump, with not having discernment, with not believing in the prophetic, and being on the wrong side of God's prophetic spirit, you'll be on the wrong side of this thing tomorrow when this heavier stuff comes down the line that's designed to totally, right? The Antichrist shows up with all his mighty ones in the sky with signs and wonders. His job is to deceive you into believing that he's the one. If you don't understand this stuff today, you're not going to understand it tomorrow. Barring God swooping down and doing some miracle in their life, I can make a list of people today that are not going to be on, and that will be in that wrong number tomorrow. And it's terrifying because it's 80% of the people, 80% of the spies did not align themselves with God's prophetic spirit and said, this isn't God. We can't do this. They're the Nephilim, for God's sake.
Why have you brought us out into the desert to die?
Yep. And our little ones.
Mm-hmm. And it would have been better
if we had
died. First of all, it would have been better if we had been slaves in Egypt. And then it would have been better if we had died in Egypt as opposed to coming out, and then it would have been better if we had died in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So it would have been better. It increases the negative every time about what would have happened to them. I mean, what God was leading them into was so terrible that it would have been better. When is it ever better if you die?
Not just that, everything
is better if you die.
Even death is better than your prophetic spirit. That's where we're at. We're seeing the same thing happen today, and it's terrifying because it's the majority, and it's happening before our very eyes.
Better if we had Hillary as president.
I'm editing that out. By the way, I will cut that part out of the show.
Why?
But this is what we're saying. Here is a woman who is a warmonger, as corrupt as anything. She is a known witch. I mean, she practices witchcraft. It would have been better if we had had her than a guy. Oh, he committed adultery. So did every other president.
You know, I have to go because I have to go do something with my wife. I didn't share, but anyway. I literally have to go. But Trump is Trump. He's like, so, whatever. He didn't come on my radar until the Apprentice show, right? And so that's like what, 2003, 2004, 2005, something like that. And I would watch The Apprentice. The first couple seasons were really good, and I used that as like it was free business school. And so I was running a production agency, and I literally would have my employees create teams, and we would go through the steps of the show. Anyway, the first thing I learned about Trump, because again, why is he's not going to be on my radar, was this. He honored the Jew and the Christian. That was the first thing I ever discerned about Trump. And it was because of watching The Apprentice. I saw he honored the Jew and the Christian. And I'm like, that's going to go a long way. Biblically speaking, that goes a long way when you honor the Jew and the Christian. Everybody that's anti-Trump doesn't get that. They're not spiritually minded. I mean, if you don't believe in the prophetic and you're not convinced that the prophetic is alive today, you're not spiritually minded. And you're going to function from your practical reasoning. And I touch on all of this stuff in my new stuff. Anyway, I got to go. I literally have to go.
Hey, my daughter is on my show tomorrow, so I just put that word out tomorrow. She's my guest tomorrow. So.
Hello, little man cub.
You might want to catch my show tomorrow.
Okay. Hey, blessings on all of you. Thank you for your support. Check out those links in the live chat, and maybe I'll add them. Mark, could I add those links to the?
I don't care what you do, man. Whatever you want to do.
I will also add them in just in the description later today. But thanks. Bye. I gotta go. You guys can keep talking, but I actually have to.
Bye.
I'm going to end the broadcast then.
All right.
Hold on. How do I do this again? There's a way to do it. Look at all that stuff. All right. What's going on? How do I do this again?
I'll do it for you. Go.
Oh, man. I'm pushing all the wrong buttons.
You want me to do it for you?
Oh, I got it. Until next week.
You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.